So without further ado, 2035 Tony L103. Okay, let's go with a 1e4. And let's play something very aggressive. Let's see if we can go for checkmate this game. Alright, he goes e6. Alright, so I guess we'll start with d4. Okay, assume he's going to play d5. Yeah. And I can play many different weapons here. I'm going to play a line that I think flies quite a bit under the radar. I named this line after Peter. But it's one of those lines that has existed for many years but isn't talked about much. I think it's originally named after Steinitz. So it starts as an advance. I'm going to push e5. And here, everybody and their brother goes c3, which seems extremely natural. I mean, what else could you possibly do? It seems unthinkable to give this pawn away, and yet that's exactly what I'm going to do. We're going to pretend that nothing is happening and go knight f3. Looks absurd. Okay, he goes knight c6. He doesn't take immediately. Again, we have the opportunity to play c3, but instead we're going to keep developing as if nothing is happening. Bishop d3, inviting him to take this pawn. This is not an easy line to explain. And I'll attempt to do that more deeply after the game. The bottom line is that you let black take the pawn and you focus instead on maintaining the e5 pawn. Because the e5 pawn is the one that's really clamping down on black's position. So what you do is you accelerate your development. You leave this pawn untouched. You quickly put a rook on e1. And you focus on fast development and on the maintaining of the pawn on e5. Bishop d7. Okay, so this guy is actually not playing this conventionally. He's not taking the pawn on d4, which is pretty rare. And we can play c3, but that wouldn't be in the spirit of the line. We can even take on c5, but that would help black develop his bishop, which is not necessarily desirable. So for now, I propose that we make essentially healthy waiting moves, if that makes sense. So we'll start with the move rook e1 to defend the pawn on e5. This is called overprotection. We're making sure this pawn is going to be super well protected in case the pawn on d4 is captured, which I imagine it will be. Rook c8 would be pretty good here, I think. Just not taking the pawn at all. But we want him to take it so I can demonstrate the main ideas of the line. Thank you, Gus, 1787. Yeah, we'll end after this game. Okay, he's thinking. He's thinking. I mean, black has many alternatives. He can go c4, which would play into our hands because it would leave the d4 pawn essentially untouched. Knight h6. All right. All right. That is a very typical French move, as I'm sure you guys know. The knight is heading for f5. We do not want to take this knight. That's a very bad idea for many reasons. This bishop is actually very important in the French. Also, the b2 pawn will be left very weak. We do want to keep this bishop alive. So one way that we can play this knight on b1 in the French, in this line of the French, rarely goes to c3. The problem with the knight going to c3 is that it blocks the c pawn and it invites him to take on d4 with tempo, which we don't really want. So as weird as this move looks, knight b to d2 actually strikes me as quite interesting. So that's one alternative. Another alternative is to play c3 now and claim that we have an improved version of an advance. Thank you, Dr. Lord Mayonnaise. On the other hand, if we go knight c3 and he takes on d4, that knight could head to b5. And from there, it could go to d6 and try to root out this bishop. So when I look at it more deeply, I actually like the move knight c3. We're going to play it. Thank you, Dr. Lord Mayonnaise, for the 10 gifted subs. Much appreciated. So does that make sense? This knight looks very awkward. It looks like we're inviting c takes d4. But I spotted this b5 square for the knight from where it could head to d6. So I think this is a justified violation of the rule. Rarely do you play this move in the advanced French. But at this level, it's all about understanding when you violate the rules. That's how you beat people at this level. And a6, okay. This gives us an opportunity for a very good move. Whenever you have a knight on c3 and a queen on b6, there's a particular move that you should always think about. It's something you can beat into your head. And that move is knight a4. What is the idea? What's the follow-up to this move? The follow-up is to play knight takes c5. And now we have rooted out this very important dark squared bishop. We've got the two bishops. Now we've got an amazing position. Two bishops. Black's position is kind of positionally in shambles. There's many ways to play this. We can choose a very aggressive approach and let's say play knight g5. We can now take on h6 because the situation has changed quite a bit. But I still want to keep the bishop. I love the move knight g5. I feel like it's aggressive and really forces black to decide what to do. Also c3 is good. Let's play it more slowly. Bishop e3 is great to develop with tempo. c3 is an excellent move here to protect the d4 square. That's just very, very typical. And I want to play this more positionally. We are not afraid of knight g4 because then we just go queen e2 and we chase the knight away with h3. This is not a worrisome move. Knight back to g8. Wow. So he's rerouting the knight to e7, but very, very slow. So how to punish something like this? Well, you don't necessarily need to punish it. We don't necessarily have to win this game in one move. And just completing our development is a good way to start. So getting the queen out of c5, bishop e3. Queen a5. Okay, now I think we can continue playing with tempo and gather important squares for our pieces. Let's go b4. Now, what's the purpose of attacking the queen? It's not just to say that we attack the queen. We are establishing a very important stronghold. One could even say an outpost for one of our pieces. What am I talking about? Bishop c5, yeah. It just slices right down this important diagonal. The bishop could park itself on d6. There's no hurry in doing that. We can do that right now. We can do that a bit later. Let's get it out of the way. Let's go bishop d6 just to park that bishop right in his gut. And now I think once the queen moves away, a great time arises for more concrete aggressive action. So what move represents the start of how do we start our attack on the king's side? What is it now time for? Because we've made all the improvements. We have a great bishop here. We've completed our development, and it's very natural to transition now into something more concrete and aggressive. And that would be knight g5 and queen h5. We are going for insta checkmate here. Yeah. I think this is just very bad for black. Well, I don't see what rook c1 would do, though. You're trying to prepare c4, I guess. That's an alternate plan for sure, but I think playing on the king's side makes more sense here because we are just hunting for black's king. No, but castling is impossible. Okay, knight g6. All right. Let's get the lady in. He has this good move, though. We might need more heat in the attack. Knight d8. All right. Knight d8 is a decisive mistake, I'm pretty sure. So what should we do here? Does anybody see a very strong move that I think wins the game? The first thing I see is bishop takes g6, which almost works. It does not work because of f takes g6. But notice the relationship between the queen and the rook. So what we do is we take on h7 here. But not just to say that we won a pawn. Rather, we are preparing bishop takes g6. We're taking a defender off of the knight. If this knight moves, then we have knight f6 check, exposing the attack on the rook. So knight d8 was way too passive. I think knight e7 was black's last chance. Yeah, his queen is nowhere to be found, and black's position totally collapses here. No, knight takes f7 did not work because he would have taken with the knight, and then the rook would have been defended twice. So you got to be very careful in such positions. Yeah, very functional move. Knight takes h7. It's not going to win a brilliancy prize, but it's going to win the game. I just don't think there's a defense. I don't think he played like a 1400. I think he played well in the opening. And once he blundered knight a4, he started tilting. I don't think this guy played like a 1400. I mean, he made some very weird moves. Like knight g8 was too slow. Inviting b4 was bad. But not an easy position to defend. Yeah, he's thinking, but queen takes c3. All right, so the win here is quite elementary. Obviously, do not go knight f6 here because if g takes f6, first we have to take the knight. And the second thing is don't rush through these moments because in making automatic moves, you often forego opportunities to win the game in a much more efficient way. Yeah. This is GG. In fact, after f takes g6, we have two different ways to win. And I think they both end the game almost immediately. He resigns. Okay, so just real fast. Yeah, he says GG. I'll say GG. Just real fast. After f takes g6, I think the simplest is queen takes g6, knight f7. And now knight comes back to g5. And this bishop is the hero because there's no rook f8. So black loses the knight and essentially just gets checkmated. Easy stuff. The second win is to go knight f6 check. And this is also basically mate. If he takes, then it's mate. Black should play king f7, but queen takes h8, and the mate threat is unstoppable. Okay, simple game. So this line, knight f3. Highly recommended for players in most rating categories, really below titled. So this was first played, let's see. This was first played in the year, I think sometime in the 1800s. This was played in the year 1826 by NN, and then Nimzovich played it like 7 times. Thank you, Junior, all we need. Nimzovich played it a ton because he understood the concepts. The most famous line here is c takes d4. Now you play bishop d3. So let's say black develops normally. Why are we, like, what is the purpose of this? Well, it's not so easy for black to develop here. Because if you play bishop c5, white goes rook e1, knight g7, knight bd2. And first of all, if black is not careful, this move already loses. We can start with knight b3 to chase the bishop. And now in comes the Greek gift sacrifice. This is a classic Greek gift. A lot of games have ended this way. I've had some students win games in a very similar way. So obviously black should start with knight g6 to block the influence of the bishop, right? But now we go knight b3. We get the knight to a nice square. And if bishop b6, then at our leisure, we could recover the pawn. We could play bishop takes g6 and knight b takes d4. And white gets a very nice blockade here on the square. Maybe not immediately. First, we should start with h3. And black actually, I think, needs to be quite precise to keep equality. But why not knight b4 to take the bishop on d3? So if black plays knight b4, we can always dip the bishop back to f1. Doesn't need to be on d3 all the time. Then we play a3. The knight is not going to be stable on b4. C takes d4 is the most popular, yeah. So I'm sure if you look this up with Stockfish, you could find a better arrangement of pieces for black. Maybe black should go queen b6. I think the way our opponent played was quite astute. just not taking the pawn at all. And here I think that I played it incorrectly. It looks like DC yields an advantage. We should just get rid of that pawn and then play either knight c3 or play the move we played in the game, c3. Establishing control over the d4 square. And then again, the knight can maneuver its way to b3. Ultimately, we are aiming for control of d4, which gives us a nice bind over black's position. Slight advantage for white. For some reason, I wanted to preserve the spirit of the line. Rook e1. So I think a lot of people would be afraid of c4. But this is a classic example of being afraid of a move just because it forces a piece back. So ask yourself, why are you afraid of c4? And you'll see that the only real reason you're afraid of it is because it forces the bishop back. But if you know that retreating moves are not inherently bad, c4 stops being scary. Just get the bishop back. Then at your leisure, you could play b3 and cut into this pawn chain. In addition, you can play c3 and build up a pawn chain of your own. This pawn on e5 gives white a big advantage because it stops black from developing his pieces to natural squares. Yeah, c4 also kills black's queenside game. And if you play c3, you make this queenside and knight look queen and knight look very stupid. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Knight h6, knight c3, and here comes, I think, almost the decisive mistake, a6. At this point, black absolutely should take on d4. Knight b5, and probably go knight f5, something to this effect. To try to stop knight d6 check. And yeah, I was thinking of going g4 here, but according to the computer, black can counterattack our knight with a6. Very unclear position. Messy. gf, ab, knight g5. I love these positions, though. Queen is coming out to h5. I think white's position is more fun to play here. So I think the move knight c3 is actually really, really good. Yeah, the engine really likes it too. a6, and now knight a4 is pretty devastating because it forces black to get rid of the bishop. Yeah, c3 is also approved of. Just establishing control over the square. And knight g8 is just, kind of tilt. I think knight f5 probably gives black a more playable position. But, yeah, if you want to know how to play this line, you can study the Nimzovich games. So Nimzovich, Bagel, Yubov from 1920 is a very good illustration of how it can go wrong for black. Nimzovich, Spielman from 1920. Just look up Nimzovich's games in this line. That will be a good start. Thank you, Julia Fig 123, for the 5 gifted subs. Much appreciated. Yeah. Knight g8, develop, attack, outpost, and now knight g5. Typical. Queen h5. Okay, so here, knight c to e7, I think, yielded the most chances. But now I was planning a rook lift, rook e3, rook f3, and I think the game is over because this is coming and black's position is totally overwhelmed. Okay, we don't really care about this move. We can just move the rook away. The game is over. So this is a good line. I think that if you're looking for a line against the French, definitely investigate this line. It's not very well studied. You can build yourself a nice, a nice niche in this line. Yeah, we had queen f3 instead of queen h5. Probably more accurate. Probably more accurate to go queen f3, although still knight d8. And even here we have knight h7. Beautiful move. Takes, and if he takes, then it's mate. No, bishop e7, just king e7, and black is fine. You don't want to let black coordinate. You don't want to give this bishop away unless it's for a good cause. No, this is fine for black. Okay. That was a good, solid way to end the stream, I think. I got to get going. Thank you, guys. Thanks for hanging out. I had a good time. Hope you did as well. See you guys tomorrow. Later.